薄いのアホ。
プリズムパワーメイクアップカードレディー。
Welcome to Shoujo and Tell, where we discuss shoujo manga and tell who's hot and who's not, talk about themes, and just generally geek out. Today, October 20th, 2019, we'll be shoujo and telling about the series Behind the Scenes by Bisco Hatori. Yes, that is the creator of Ouran High School Host Club. There you go. I'm your host, Ashley McDonald, and I'm joined by Shae from Shaegeeksout. Hey, Shae.
Hey.
Okay. So, I just kind of told people what you do, where you're from, but would you like to give a more elaborate intro of yourself?
Sure, I'd love to. So yes, my name is Shae. I have a YouTube channel called Shaegeeksout, where I primarily talk about books and manga, and I tend to read quite a bit of shoujo manga just in personal preferences. So, yeah.
Yeah, because shoujo manga is the best.
I'm not arguing.
Exactly. Okay, so we're here to do Behind the Scenes, which I would describe as Ouran 2.0, basically.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Would you like to give a more elaborate plot synopsis than that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, essentially, we're following Ranmaru, who is in his first year of college. So, essentially, he's a college freshman. I think they call him first years in Japan. But anyways, he's sitting there kind of like mooning over his thoughts about school in general and how he's feeling lonely and he doesn't fit in. And all of a sudden, this like person in a bridal gown like leaps over him, and like there's this whole big like theatrical scene that takes place in front of him. And essentially he is slowly pulled in by this group called the Art Squad. And it's kind of where he finds his people, and he's like afraid to show his real self to them. But once he does, he thrives in this atmosphere. So it's essentially about Ranmaru kind of figuring out his life with this group called the Art Squad.
Yeah, and they make props and stuff for film.
Yeah, they're essentially like, in theater terms, they're a tech crew. So they build the sets, they do the costumes, all that kind of stuff. So that's in theater, that's what they're referred to as a tech crew. I did theater for lots of years and I miss it a lot, actually. But yeah, so that's the easiest way to kind of describe what they do, because they do everything. That's not the actual acting.
Yeah. I was like, is this realistic? I don't have any insight into, theater or anything.
Oh, yeah, it very much is. Like, the tech crew is like the bones of everything. They do all the hard work for you, and then the actors just like step in and do their acting part. That again is hard in a different way, but all the leg work and manual labor is done by your tech crew.
Yay! Done by Tomu, just carrying boxes.
I love Tomu. I just have to say that right off the bat.
It's true. I love Tomu as well.
Yay!
Yay! We're gonna get into that. All right. So you had read this twice.
Yes, I've read it through completely twice now. The last one just being last weekend when I was hosting a readathon where I was reading a bunch of my favorite things.
Oh, is this one of your favorite things?
Bisco Hatori is one of my favorite things. We'll just put it that way.
That's a fair thing to say.
I mean, Ouran is like the gateway shoujo in so many ways. It's that or Fruits Basket for 90% of people. It's one of those two that they start with.
It's true. It's weird to me. I guess we can say this off the bat. It's like, it's very weird to me to know that, like, when I assume that we're relatively kind of the same age. I'm 29.
Yeah, I'm 5 years older.
Oh, okay. Well, no, that proves my point a little bit even more, I think, is that, like, growing up, like, definitely Fruits Basket and Ouran were, like, the biggest things in the mid-2000s, right? But now we're, like, almost, like, we're 2 decades or, like, at least a full decade past those things. So it's weird to me to be like, oh, the 14 and 15-year-olds of today, maybe their first exposure to Bisco Hatori is Behind the Scenes. I'm like, that's so weird to think about.
That is so weird, because Ouran is, thanks to things like Netflix, those will still always be gateways.
It's true. I'm like, I don't think that that's like going to be a big case, because I think that Ouran is still definitely in circulation enough for people to be like,
completely.
oh yeah. Yeah. It was interesting with this series because my boyfriend Asher was also reading it like kind of behind me as I was reading all the volumes just now. So I actually only read the first, like I was trying to keep up with the series as it was being published, but obviously I have to always read manga for this and like prep for this and everything. So I only read the first 2 volumes before just being like, you know what? Now it's over and we're going to cover it on this podcast. Like, now that's just how this is going to go.
There you go.
So yeah, so then he was reading it. He's like halfway through. He's like on volume 4 or something. And he was like, yeah, I don't know. If I had been exposed to these characters, and so like in some ways he likes these characters more than the Ouran ones. And again, I think that's because we've like grown up and like some things about Ouran have definitely not aged well, as discussed in the Ouran podcast episodes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I would have to say I would agree. What Bisco Hatori did with her characters in this series as opposed to Ouran is she took a lot of the good parts of her Ouran cast and kind of blended them together to make individual characters. I mean, there's still some stuff, I'm sure we'll get into it later, about gender stereotypes and whatnot. But yeah, I really think she took some of the best parts of her characters and blended them into like one cohesive person and then modernized it a little bit. And I think that helped a lot, especially for her male cast. Her male cast is much more modern, much more relatable now.
But so what would be your favorite aspect of the series? Like, why should people read this after finishing Ouran?
Well, they're similar, but they're different. Honestly, behind the scenes, I think is fantastic alone for the anxiety rep. The anxiety rep is very strong in this particular series, and I think it's done really well. That's one of the things that's a great selling point on this one, is you're dealing with all the anxieties people deal with in college and during those formative years, because it makes a big difference in how you are as an adult when you learn how to cope with all those things. So you experience a lot of anxiety through that period of your life.
Yeah. And I would say that even though the characters are obviously still dramatic manga characters, and like
it's shoujo manga. They're going to be dramatic and over the top. Yeah, they all have their own like insecurities and stuff that do come through.
Yeah, I definitely think that in relation to Ouran's characters, it's like, oh yeah, these people feel like more people, and you can like relate to their struggles, and you can be like, this is a person that I like kind of know in real life,
like the real poor college kids that we all were.
Yeah.
Opposed to the spoiled Ouran kids. I love the spoiled Ouran kids. Do not get me wrong here. But the behind the scenes characters definitely feel more realistic.
And I don't know, I like behind the scenes also because you can tell that Bisco Hatori was just like, I did so much research for this manga, and like...
Oh, completely. And it's beautifully drawn too. That's one thing you can't show so much in a podcast is the art. Bisco Hatori's art has always been one of my favorites.
Yeah, and you can see how much he's improved, but it's just funny because she like did all this research and then probably doesn't use like 75% of it, and then when she does use it, she like goes into so much detail about like how to do exactly something. Like there will be spreads where it's just like, here is how you
here
make
is the
this.
DIY of how you make this.
It's like, whoa, that's not a story, Bisco Hatori, but like, please write a like DIY craft book now. Like I really think she should do that.
A behind the scenes craft book, please.
Yes, where is that? Bring that to us. Oh my god.
Yes.
Yeah, so in that way I think it's like stronger than Ouran, because I actually feel that it could inspire people to like do crafts and
to express their creative side, and a lot of people suppress that, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, and like that whole struggle is very great, but like literally reading this, the parts where she's describing the crafts and everything, I'm like, no, this is great. She makes something really complicated and makes it seem so easy and like a desirable thing to do. And that's exactly like, what you should be doing when you're trying to give complicated explanations. Like the more simple you can make it and more appealing, the more people will like try. And, she goes through people who are like, I did all the steps and it turned out horribly, like in the manga.
Exactly, because that would be me.
Yeah, exactly.
My artistic talent is very little.
I know. I'm like, oh my god, I can't do crafts for my life. But like this manga made me kind of want to be like, oh, maybe. And I'm like, no.
Maybe I'll try again now that I'm an adult and I have less steady hands.
I know. I'm like, no, it's not going to work. But like, yeah, in general, I'm like, oh, that's really fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so if we have made behind the scenes seem appealing, it is again, as we briefly mentioned, an ensemble cast. So, you'll find your own little quirky person to love. Let's see, there are 6 main characters if we're counting So. Yeah. So,
yeah.
It's a little more restrained than Ouran, but like there's also like tons of side characters because it's so episodic, and so you'll find your person in there. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, so before we delve into the spoiler section, you can find behind the scenes. It's available from Viz, both physically and digitally. So maybe your library has it because they know that Bisco Hatori is the cool person who wrote Ouran and all those things. Yes. So, and if they don't have it, you can request it, or you can just go buy it. It's only 7 volumes. I say only. That's like a mid-length series. That's like,
yeah, for a shoujo, that feels mid to short.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you are one of those youngins who's like, oh, Bisco Hatori, I've heard of that person, and you don't want to
exactly
delve into the 18 volumes that is Ouran, you can give this a shot and see how this makes you feel. Yeah, and it did only finish publishing pretty recently in America, like within the past couple months, like midsummer or something. So
yeah, I think it was July.
Yeah. All right. So look, I'm trying to keep up. But now we are going to spoil all of the things. So if you have not read it, or if you don't care because you're like, I read Ouran, I know what's up with Bisco Hatori. It's just Ouran 2.0, right? Like, yeah, let's come along for the sequel. All right. So we'll start with, we got some listener questions that I think will jump us into some other things as well. This is a very simple one. But very important because ensemble cast. So it's from Dynamic Dylan 26 on Twitter, and it is just, who is your favorite character in the series?
I kind of have 2 answers for this. I'm bad. I'm really bad about picking one person. I've always been that person. Like, it's just who I am. So I really love Tomu. As I said earlier, Tomu is just like the person who was raised like as a bully who turns out to be nothing but a cinnamon roll. He's just adorable to me, and I just think he's the best boy ever. And then I think from there it would have to be Ryuji, actually.
Oh.
I like Goda a lot. I think he has enough, like, for me, he's the perfect blend of like Tamaki and Kyoya from Ouran. Like, I think he meshes those two, where he's quirky and weird and out there, and everybody just kind of deals with him because of that. But at the same time, he's very methodical and like really is particular about things. And so I think he's a really good blend of the two from Ouran into one person.
That's true. And Goda definitely reminded me of like very particular friends that I have where I'm like, I love you and I want to be you. And also I definitely kind of hate you sometimes. And you're
No, I totally get that. Because it's like, ugh, you just need to like relax for like 2 minutes.
I know. Okay, but since you mentioned Goda, this leads to a different listener question. This is from Lum Ramayasha, who hosts the Manga Mavericks podcast. They sent this to us via email. They have more questions that we'll get to later, but this one is, do you like Goda better with long hair or short hair? And they had comment, personally, I liked his long hair style more. It stood out more and made him look cooler, in my opinion. Apparently, Hatori planned to cut his hair from the very beginning, though.
Well, see, that's a personal preference thing. Because it's like, are you man buns or are you emo boy?
Well, we need to know, Shae.
Me, I'm all for emo boy. Man buns bother me. I'm a cosmetologist by profession, so I hate man buns. Like a flaming purple passion. It's bad. I don't like them very much at all. So I prefer it when he's more emo and a little bit shorter, personally. But both look good on him. I have to say that. Very few people can pull off the longer hair.
I think I mostly agree with that assessment. Like, when he cut off his hair, I was like, suddenly he is very hot.
I know. I'm like, hello, hotness factor. You just went up.
And I was like, it worked on me. I think both of them got a little bit ruined for me. This is very, like, weirdly personal, I guess. But, like, eventually I looked at him more and more with his short hair, and I was like, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Peen from Kimi ni Todoke. And I was like,
Oh my gosh, yeah, you're so right. Oh my gosh. I didn't put that together at all.
It's definitely like the combination of like dramatic hair change plus like their eye shape is more typically Asian, I would say. So
it's true. Oh my gosh. That's an amazing comparison.
I know. So then I was like, I might have ruined it for myself, but I was like, no, Peen also looked way better with short hair. So like,
agreed. Fine. Definitely agreed on that one.
Hard agree. I know.
Hard agree.
And then looking at him again with long hair, I was like, he looks like Marcus/Masaru from Digimon. And I used to have a Digimon podcast, so then I was like, oh no, I definitely can't like that one. No, that boy is bad. That's a bad boy from Digimon. No.
I love it.
I know.
That's so funny.
So while Goda's longer hair might be more distinctive, and he had a like nice reason for doing it, involving, you know, him once being on the path of becoming a monk, and he had like a shaved head,
right?
And then it took him forever to grow it out. I do think that his short hair is better.
And I also think it's just like early 2000s me who totally went through an emo phase in my college age.
Right?
Like, yeah, I think that's why that speaks to me.
Oh, yeah, totally. The me who was into Linkin Park very much.
Yes. Linkin Park Shae really likes the short emo.
Yes. So, I mean, that was the most important question, but we can keep going, I guess. So I agree with you about Tomu. I also think I'm quickly realizing I'm like, okay, I have two character types, I guess, that I gravitate towards normally. Obviously, there are exceptions. But I'm like, Tomu is like this sweet, innocent boy who like just wants to be a superhero. And I actually really hate superheroes, but I do tend to, in like shonen things, gravitate towards these like pure-hearted masculine boys. That's how I would describe them.
Pure boys, yes, that's so me.
It's just like, you know, it's the masculinity, but like minus all the BS that comes with it.
Right.
You know?
It's the manly part that I think naturally as women we're attracted to, without all the ego that's attached to that stereotype. I love them for that.
Yeah, and like not like mistreating women, and just all these things.
Exactly.
And I'm like, Tomu's a good boy. And like, I liked his overall arc. Like, it's probably one of the simplest, but it was also just like, you know, it fit in with everybody else.
It was just simple and sweet and perfect for him. It was the best.
I know. Goda's like, someday he'll realize that he would be a great masked character, like masked superhero actor, instead of being, you know, literally behind the scenes. He can be behind a mask and everything. And
exactly.
And I was like, oh, yay, Tomu. I feel like for a while I was also very attracted to Izumi, though.
I think everybody had an Izumi moment.
But I think for me, overall, with him, it was just his character felt too cliche.
Really?
In so many ways. Yeah, with the memory loss thing, I've experienced that in other series. And maybe just in my book reading, too, that it's a fairly common trope.
And so, like, that didn't draw me to loving him more. It just kind of made me annoyed at him because he didn't ever try to do anything about it.
Yeah, no, definitely once that became hinted at in, like, Volume 4 or whatever, I was like, oh, no, this is going to ruin Izumi for me.
Yeah, no, I'm done.
I was like,
my moment's over.
But in general, I love how spacey he is, and he's so funny. Like, there's the one panel where, it's like early on, I don't remember the context, though, but he's just like, there's 3 panels of him next to each other, and it's just him making different faces of, like, spaciness and being like, I don't know, like, whatever. And I was just like, Izumi, why are you like this? It's great. And then you find out why he's like this. And then it gets taken back. It's like, oh, you were like this before the accident, too. Ha, 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 ha. I'm like,
right.
Don't bring amnesia into things. I'm like, no.
Right.
No.
Amnesia is just one of those tropes that needs to go away from literature in general. It's so overdone.
It's really over. I'm like, unless you're really going to go for it, you know, like you're going to be like Memento or something. Like, unless you're just like fully
unless you're going to go hard for it, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth it. Like, just don't do it.
Don't put us through that, man. Come on.
Yeah. But yeah, no, Goda was fun. I don't know that I liked like the turn with him where it's like he always wanted to be a director and he's always yelling at everybody because he actually can't do it himself. I'm like, oh.
That part of his story, I was like, yeah. But, you know, like actually seeing him direct and what it meant to people, like it ended up being a good thing by the end. But the middle part of that was just a little rough for me.
There are definitely some rough bits in here.
Yeah. And I think that's probably my biggest complaint about the series overall is just that I wish we had another volume or two to flush out those rough bits so they didn't feel so rough. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's always hard to like really suss out what happened, you know, behind the scenes lol of a manga. But Hatori was like, it was always planned to be 7 volumes, and I was just real bad at storyboarding it out. And I'm like, okay, is that true or what? I don't know. Like, maybe.
Who knows? But I could definitely take spin-off series following different groups of this after the end. Like,
Oh, God. Spin-off series. Yeah, there was a nice epilogue.
Right, exactly. That's why I'm like,
you know, for certain parts of this, like following Ranmaru's crazy family, I could totally take a spin-off series about them and their adventures. I would love that.
Oh my God, Ranmaru's crazy family. This is definitely like a Ouran throwback that she was like, I don't have time to pursue this nonsense.
Right. So it's one of
over
those things. If she ever decided to visit that and did a spin-off series, I'd be all about it. I think it would just be fun.
Yeah, I definitely think there's some war between like Hatori trying to be serious and like incorporate, like, she's like, I was inspired by steampunk. I'm like, this only ever comes up in like the cover illustrations and stuff. And like her, like when she uses humor in this series, I do laugh. Like, I think it's very funny. Like, there are lots of things that land with me. And, you know, again, Asher would literally be reading the volume behind whatever volume I was reading, like in the same room. So I would hear him laugh too. But I just don't, again, it's just like she didn't go fully into anything in the series. So
right.
in the
She
end, it
wasn't
all kind of
fully
feels
like the serious track, and she wasn't fully her comedy track. So it's like this weird middle ground where you're like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. And,
I
you
don't know whether I'm supposed to laugh or not, but it's funny, so I'm laughing anyway.
it's like, it is funny, but then it's like, where are we going with any of this? And then like, it's all just so haphazard by the end that it's like, okay, I don't know how to feel about anything, but all right.
Exactly.
But okay, so we should mention more our favorites, or not our favorites, our not favorites, are the people that we didn't bring up yet. So I mean, we've discussed Ranmaru. Ranmaru is actually relatable, even though he's not my favorite character.
He wasn't my favorite character, but he's a character that a lot of people need and that a lot of people will resonate with. I think especially in that generation younger than us, because I feel like their anxiety levels are very different even than ours.
Oh, yeah.
just because they
Feel different pressures than we did. So I think the anxiety rep will be even stronger for them than it was for me.
Yeah, what I liked about him was the representation of, like, pessimism. And it wasn't, like, really this dark emo pessimism that I feel like we're normally...
You know, you look at him, you think everything's fine, but then he starts to speak. He's like, what the crap are you doing? This is all wrong. This is never going to work. And I think that's much more realistic for a true pessimist.
It's also just like he's always like, everything is my fault. Like, I definitely have that anxiety where like something goes wrong and I'm like, oh no, what did I do? And they're like, you didn't do anything. It's like...
I completely agree. Like, I think naturally, I'm just one of those apologetic people where I automatically apologize if anything's wrong. It's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
whether it's my fault or not.
exactly. It's hard to even be like, is Ranmaru the main character of this? Like, he's supposed to be, but I feel like he gets overshadowed by Goda, which, like,
In ways
sense.
he kind of does.
Yeah.
But I think it's meant for both of them to be the main characters, Ranmaru and Goda both.
Really? Okay.
Another character that was really great to me that was really well done was Maasa.
Oh, yes.
I think
Like, her love of horror and gore just was so great. Like, she wants to be that girly girl that guys expect, but that's not who she is. And so you see her kind of go through that journey of accepting and loving herself because of that. And I really like that she learned to love herself through that. But I still think she was going around trying to get boys the very wrong way.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's her biggest
That's her
problem.
MO.
So, I mean, definitely one of the big themes of this is to, like, overall, everybody is weird, right? And all you have to do... I read recently Felicia Day's book, which is called Embrace Your Weird, which is, like...
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, so it's a self-help, like, here's how to be more creative, like, let your creative freak fly, because really, like, whatever you think is... you know, abnormal about you is really what makes you great in all these things.
Exactly.
And I'm just like, yeah, it's all about just learning to accept yourself and expect that, like, you know, what makes you unique will eventually help somebody. Like, no, it's not going to help everybody because that's impossible. But, like, somebody out there will appreciate it. And what's wrong with Maasa is that she just keeps being like, I'm not going to, like, I don't know. I just think she's not patient enough to, like, find that one person who will absolutely be into zombies enough for her.
Right. Well, I really wanted Maasa and Tomu to be together because he just loves her for who she is, and I love that. I ship it so hard.
I mean, yeah, we're gonna get more into that, but like, I'm like, they might be a couple, they might not be. Who knows? It's really hard to say.
My headcanon says yes, they're a couple.
Yes, they're definitely a couple. I know. I mean, that's basically like, I'm like, that's strongly implied.
Yeah.
But
the other one we haven't really talked about is Ruka.
I know.
I haven't mentioned her yet.
Ruka. I struggle with Ruka. That's why.
Well, Ruka is that typical demure Japanese woman in so many ways, and like lets her family control her and all that kind of stuff. So she's a hard character to love. Yet she was pitched in the story as like best girl, and I'm like, no, that's not working for me.
I know. I'm just like, no, she's definitely not best girl. And not even, I think what bothers me more than like her demeanor and everything is just that it's much more the stereotypical, like, we have miscommunicate, like we don't tell each other how we're really feeling. So
I hate miscommunication tropes so much.
Yeah. So it's all just a big misunderstanding of like expectations for each other. And I'm like, yeah, maybe Yota, instead of being a weird creeper who like followed her to the festival for Halloween or whatever, and you know, secretly tried to protect her, maybe you should have just been like, hey, this is my plan, I'm trying to help you out. Like, let's go. So do your own thing. And then
the whole Ruka has a stalker storyline. I was oh
yeah, I was like, why is this here? I don't need this. I don't need this. And it was all just a way to get Goda to like protect her,
step up, you know,
and show his feelings. And I'm like, oh no, I don't want that.
Right? There's so many other ways they could have gone about that in like a creative, really fun way that I just felt like this way was a cop out.
Yeah. And it's not even like, it wasn't even about, like nobody has concern about it after Goda protects her that one time. I'm like, that dude, did he learn his lesson? Did he stop stalking her? Like, what?
Right?
Like, he wasn't
there
really...
was no follow-up with that.
Yeah. I was like, I mean, he wasn't really punished, and, like, he wasn't, like, that publicly shamed for it, you know? I'm like, I don't know. You know?
Right?
Did you get a restraining order on him? Like,
I would have.
I know. So Ruka is definitely... yeah. When Ranmaru is like, I like Ruka too, I'm like, no, that's boring. Don't do it. The only thing I wanted to say about Maasa was that I think it's really funny that recently I listened to Charles Duhigg's podcast, which is called How To, and this isn't like the latest episode, but the last episode that I listened to was about how to survive the zombie apocalypse.
Oh, yeah.
Basically as a way to be like, to survive any pandemic. He was like, well, if you're preparing for the zombie apocalypse, like, you're definitely going to be able to survive any real pandemic. So he's like, I went to talk to like people who are actually really obsessed and have a group for like surviving the zombie apocalypse. And then the dude that he interviewed was like, yeah, like, I met my wife through this group. So like, Maasa, get it together.
Maasa, join a group, sweetie. There's a group of people that will love you.
There's definitely, Maasa, get it together.
If you don't want Tomu's love, of course, but...
Which he does. I'm just saying there are multiple routes here. Love is possible, Maasa.
Like, I'm staring at my notes, and it says Tomu and Maasa belong together, and that's final.
And that's final.
Those are the kind of notes I take when I read things.
Yeah, well, okay, so that's definitely a question that we got from Lum Rama Yasha that we can do now. So it was, they also said, also at her panel at AX, Hatori noted that she had plans for a certain romantic pairing that changed during the middle of the serialization. I feel like she was really trying to make something happen between Tomu and Maasa during the series, but that relationship never really developed into a romantic one. Would you like to have seen them get together? Yes.
Heck yes. All day long, every day.
All day. Those two simple brains deserve each other.
Well, because they understand each other on that fundamental level that they both need.
Yeah. Like, Tomu provides, some leveling for Maso when she gets too into her crazy, but he also admires her. I mean, he admires everybody, but I think he
appreciates her crazy.
Yeah.
That's what everybody needs. They need someone to appreciate their crazy or their weird or whatever you want to call it. You have to find your person who appreciates that. I'm lucky enough to have found that person.
Yeah. And Maasa, it's harder to suss out whether Maasa likes Tomu, I guess.
That's the hard part to figure out, because Tomu very clearly loves Maasa.
Yeah. But Masa's always like, Tomu's so dumb.
But at the same time, she went with him at the end, so I hope they figured it out.
I mean, yeah, they're making babies in America. That's
yeah.
Now I'm debating which question to answer first. We'll do the last from Lum Ramayasha. But they also had a comment where he's like, I read behind the scenes earlier this summer in preparation for Hatori's Anime Exo appearance, and I really connected with Ranmaru and So's struggles with social anxiety and communication. Again, I do think that is, personally, me, Ashley, think that is the strongest point of this. And I,
Shae, agree with you.
Yes. And Lum goes on, and that they love the ensemble cast. I think it might have been my favorite work of hers yet. Lum, that's so strong, I have to say.
Yeah.
Over Ouran?
I can't say it's my favorite of hers. Because I've read all 3 of hers that are out in the US. I've read Millennium Snow, I've read this one, and I've read Ouran.
Yeah. I would actually say, like, Millennium Snow, the second half of Millennium Snow, the last 2 volumes that she wrote after Ouran might be my favorite thing from Hatori.
Because they're amazing.
I know! They're so good. Like,
I could have taken so much more in that storyline, but I understand why she ended it where she did.
I know. No, it was perfect. I was like, oh my God, you took this trash first 2 volumes you wrote and then you made it amazing. How was that?
Right? Obvious, like, seriously, the biggest, like, comeback series for her is Millennium Snow, for sure.
For sure.
But I think her strongest series overall is still Ouran, because comedy is where she thrives.
It's true.
I understand she wants to be taken seriously,
but her comedy is just, like, above and beyond.
Yeah. And we were talking about, like, Asher and I were being like, oh, if she wants to do a steampunk theme, why doesn't she just write a steampunk story? And I'm like, can we really
write a historical manga that's actually steampunk?
Yeah. And we're like, would she really pull that off? I don't know. But, like, I'd love to see her try.
I think she could.
Go for it, Hatori.
If she went along the veins of, like, Soulless by Gail Carriger, which is an urban fantasy series that's very, like, a comedy of manners is how it's pitched.
So you deal with all the, like, niceties and stuff.
But you have all these people and paranormal creatures that are, like, defying that stereotypical norm. It's really funny. Funny book series if you ever want to get into it. But I think if she went along those lines for a manga, it could really work well for her.
Yeah, so I really hope that Hatori does that next, and then...
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
That would be good. Let's go, Hatori. We got it for you. Okay, so the last question from Lum was, how do you feel about how Ranmaru's relationship with his family was developed? Was it developed? That's my question.
It wasn't. It was hinted at.
Yeah. But Lum goes on to say he had a lot of stress over them being distant, but it turned out they were just busy and badass weirdos who really loved and supported him, and he was fretting unnecessarily. At her Anime Expo panel, Hatori mentioned that originally she planned to have an arc where Ranmaru went home during winter break, where the story would focus on Ranmaru reconciling with his family, but she ended up skipping over it.
Well, that would have been awesome.
I know. I think she mentioned that briefly in a side panel, too. She was like, I meant to have him go home for New Year's, but oops, we went straight from Christmas to spring. Haha, oh well. And it's like, what? Okay. So the other question is, would you have liked there to have been more conflict in Ranmaru's relationship with his family? And would you have liked to have seen more stories involving them in general? I mean, yes. They definitely are weird.
Like I said, I would take
stories.
a spin-off series about his crazy family any day. But at the same time, like, I do wish that he would have at least, like, faced his family and really, like, talked it out rather than just having the one scene with them. Like, it would have been nice to have an actual, like, small story arc with them.
I know, and Hatori set us all up for it. She was like, "Oh, they only make a brief appearance now," but later, she was like, "Oh, they're gonna, he's gonna go home."
Oopsies, no later.
Oh, and I was like, "What? I feel robbed. I feel robbed."
Right? Because I just wanted to experience the crazy family. Like, why didn't we get that? It would have been so good.
I wanted them to sort out this sardines comments.
Right?
It's so easy. Just talk about it, y'all. Oh my god.
I know.
And I don't think that he's fretting about it unnecessarily. Like, when people don't communicate with you properly, like, that's still on them, you know? Like,
Right.
his concerns as he understands them and has perceived the world, like, makes sense.
They're valid.
Yeah. Although it was funny in the one chapter where they appeared when, you know, the art squad is there and they're like following them around or whatever, and they jump out, and Ranmaru has briefly explained, you know, his mom and his brother, or not his brother, his dad and his sister in like these weird terms that, like, then the art squad meets them and they're like, "How did you leave out all these very specific details about like your sister being a thug who's now a Lolita?" And like,
Right.
and like your mom being a former like surveillance agency agent or something, and now you know, just like works in a normal job and wanders around. It was like, what? Ranmaru.
Right.
Oh, Ranmaru. It's because he's Ranmaru and he doesn't, he just doesn't. I love every time everybody takes a dig at him for being like, you know, he's all like, "Look at how bad I was." Like in the first chapter, he'll be like, "Everybody hated me because I helped this one team and then they won and then everybody was jealous." And,
Right.
and everybody in the art squad's like, "Are you bragging right now? And you don't know? Like, are you not even humble bragging? You just like don't know. You just don't know what you're doing." Like,
Right.
oh, Ranmaru. Okay, so this is our last question, was from Melissa C. writes on Instagram. And she wrote, "There seem to be so few manga series set in college. What are your thoughts on that?"
For me, I think a lot of it is the fact that for a long time in the US, like a lot of josei series weren't even being published.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, that blend of college is somewhere in the middle of shoujo and josei. So I think for a long time, a lot of the college series were demographicked as josei because they dealt with some more adult themes. And so we just weren't seeing them in the US for a really long time. But I do think it helps that the new adult book series is kind of a big thing here in the US and has been for the last, like, what, 7-8 years now?
Yeah.
So that, I think, really helped fuel the fact that there was interest in those college age kind of series here in the US. So they actually started publishing them and bringing them here.
Yeah. For me, it's definitely like new adult is a new category here in the US that I think helps this. And also I think with that, it's kind of like, again, you know, we are like of an age where like shoujo was like the thing in the 2000s, right? Like that's what we were all buying. Like that was the biggest demographic, was like teenage girls buying manga.
Or teenage boys buying manga.
Or teenage boys buying the shoujo mangas too, because they were into the fruits baskets and everything too.
Exactly.
But yeah, like it was kind of like fueled by shoujo manga, and now that, you know, we're getting older and now there's this whole new influx, but it's kind of like, you know, it's more acceptable for adults and everything to read comics. So as we get older, I think, you know, they're trying to keep up demographically, with everything. So they're like, okay, you know, more people are interested in the josei and the college age things.
Completely.
Yeah, and for me, it's also just like, I think this is a more general observation that I don't have like super hard data on, right? But like in general, until fairly recently, you know, going through high school was really the only like universal thing, particularly in America. Like high school is still not even compulsory in Japan still, I think. But it's like, you know, everybody went through high school, and then like maybe some people went and got jobs, but others went off to college and everything. But now it's more and more like everybody goes to college. Like you can't get decent jobs a lot of the time without a college degree. So now it's like, oh, more and more people are going to get college degrees. And I think that this overall goes with the trend of like, I've talked about this with my friends, and especially I used to live in San Francisco and work in tech. and it's very much this like this trend of our generation kind of refuses to grow up in a lot of ways, like, and you know,
I would agree with that.
yeah. So there's like an infantilization of us. So college is just this extra step between like adulthood and childhood that now we're like, oh, that's a legitimate phase, and more people are experiencing it, so it's becoming more and more relatable. Like Hatori in the side panels at one point even says she didn't go to college, so that's like she even had to research just like what is college like, you know, and beyond all this art stuff.
But at the same time, in this series, we don't ever really see them in class very much.
No, they never go to class. No,
I was like,
that's not a thing.
How are they passing their classes? I mean, I think you see one like big study for a test or something in the whole series.
Yeah, like Ranmaru definitely was like wrote papers one time, and he had the side chapter with Izumi buying all the books or whatever. Like that's the first time he bonds with Izumi. He's going to buy all these books for his paper. But yeah, no, they definitely failed all their like that's they just made films all the time. They give lip service to homework and stuff, but yeah, they never go to school.
Yeah, seriously.
But yeah, in general, I just feel like it just follows this trend because Japan again follows a lot of like America's school system. They like got it, you know, after we occupied them after World War II. So their school system is heavily modeled on ours and everything. I think it makes sense too. It's exactly what happened with YA. Like young adult didn't used to be a category that anybody cared about until the 1950s.
When I was growing up, YA was like Sweet Valley High and Fear Street. Like, YA did not exist as it does now.
I know. So it's only gotten more and more. And like YA definitely didn't like the very early YA was like the 1950s with like Catcher in the Rye and like
exactly
the 60s with like The Outsiders, but it was like few and far between. And now
and again,
it's like,
those just got dubbed like modern classics rather than creating their own genre around them.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, so now we've gone from young adult to new adult, and like, I don't know, eventually we'll probably just have like adult. I don't know. We'll just have to start calling all the books that. Because I work in books, I love always having the discussion with people where it's like, you know, it's really stupid because high school students are reading quote unquote adult books, like they're forced to read classics and crap that they don't care about, right? And then adults are reading the young
adults. They're reading all the YA.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, oh, this is so stupid. It's so stupid. We're doing everything wrong.
Right?
Everything we could do wrong, we're doing it wrong. But yeah, so I mean, I think that this means we're going to see more stories set in college. Yeah,
I think so too.
Whether they're josei or not. I mean, I guess this is weird that it's marketed as shoujo. You know what? It doesn't matter because shoujo is a made up thing. It's all made up. The points don't matter.
Well, you know, when you think about it, comparison-wise, Princess Jellyfish is technically classified as a josei, but it definitely feels more like a shoujo. So maybe they based it on that kind of a generalization, even though, you know, we're clearly dealing with
older people in Princess Jellyfish. Like, you're still,
maturity-wise, they're still in that kind of shoujo category, which is why it kind of bridges both gaps.
Yeah. Oh, Princess Jellyfish. So good.
It's so good.
I feel like this is interesting in the way that, like, so we've discussed how it's very clear that in some ways Hatori has like stepped up her game for the series, quote unquote, evolved, as Goda would say. Mm-hmm. But in other ways, I'm just like, no, it's not. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
In a lot of ways, I almost feel like, how do I want to word this? It's like Hatori wanted to do something a little more challenging and a little more serious, but as she got into it, it just kind of fell into old habits
in some way, if that makes sense.
That makes sense, yeah. I mean, I do really love seeing it because, you know, in the sidebar, she frets a lot also about how she's like, oh no, everybody's gonna see this and be like, you're just doing Ouran again or whatever. But it's actually really refreshing for her to very thoroughly in the sidebars, where normally, like, I don't read the sidebars as much if they stop being interesting.
For her, I always do. I don't know why with hers I do as opposed to others, but yeah.
Well, in this one, she's going on and on and on about how she's like, no. I need to convince you that I'm not just ripping off Ouran, right? So like,
Exactly.
So she's going all into like how she came up with the creation of it, like who she sought to like help her understand how to do crafts and all these things. Mm-hmm. And so in that way, it's really fun actually to see how it was like, yeah, she took like the things that interested her in Ouran, and then she's like, but what didn't I understand in that, or like what aspect of an ensemble cast didn't I get to explore in that, and what can I do that's like a spin on that that's still really interesting to me. So it was like really, really fun to see that part of it too.
Right. And I can definitely see how they are different. Like I say, I think she took the good parts of Ouran and infused them in this series, but still did a pretty good job of making it feel like its own. Where I feel like it stands without Ouran in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, like Anna, you don't need to read Ouran to appreciate this.
Completely. And I think just for that reason alone, I think she almost tried too hard to make it not like Ouran.
That's true.
And I think that's kind of why you kind of don't know how to feel about it, is because naturally some of that quality and stuff started slipping in just because of who she is and the way she tells stories. But because she was trying so hard to make it not Ouran, it fell flat for a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's like with Ruka in particular, I think, part of the struggle with her and liking her also is that it's like, oh, this does feel like an Ouran holdover because she's supposed to be rich and like from this like traditional quote unquote family where, she's being forced to do something, but it's just kind of like, oh, that's not really like heavily explored, and like it's not funny like it was in Ouran, and like I don't know, it's like undramatic how she eventually overcomes it. Like yeah, they just eventually talk. Like there is the funny bit where they like the whole elaborate Ranmaru being like, oh, the problem is that her aunt is in their house now, so we're gonna go pretend to be a construction crew and like set up a
chase the ant out.
Yeah, and set up a scary projection that like will scare her out. And I'm like, what? Who thinks of this? Like,
right, and that's where it felt a little like Ouran because it was just too over the top of a plan.
Yeah, but like it doesn't make sense within like the constraints of who Ranmaru is or anything. Yeah, it just felt like such a Ouran holdover that it was like, no, this doesn't fit here.
Yeah.
And I'm not feeling it, Hatori. I don't feel it in my heart.
Yes.
Oh no. Okay, I had the personal question of because this is it's like, there's obviously a continuous thread of like through the characters and everything, but for the most part it was very episodic. It was like, and here's the part where there is a brat child actor and like
right, yeah.
Here is Izumi's chapter, here is Ruka's chapter. Was there any one story that was like your favorite?
Well, obviously I loved Tomu's moment.
Yes.
And I think second to that, it would be, I think it's in volume 2, where a girl asked them to help her.
Oh, yeah,
like,
that was
get her ex-boyfriend to understand.
But it ends up actually helping them, like, realize why they love each other, and they end up reconciling through the whole thing. It was just so sweet and cute and fun. And I think if she'd stayed in that lane a little bit more, it could have been really, really sweet series.
Yeah, that's true. That one also I really liked. It has a good Tomu funny moment where they're
completely.
where they're like, so the point in this chapter was that they had messed up her room so much. Like I was like, this plan doesn't make any sense, but like
right, but they totally like grossed the guy out with their her apartment.
I know, but for me, why it doesn't make any sense is like, okay, so they messed up her room even though she had been like a pretty neat freak before that, and I'm like, wouldn't somebody who then sees that be like, wait a minute, this isn't who you really are. Like, what's wrong with you? Are you depressed? I'm like afraid for you now is what I would think the natural response would be. But on a comedy level, I really loved it because they were like so over the top. And then they're like in the closet, like stalking her, and they're like narrating to themselves all the crazy crap that they've like put in her room. And then at one point there's mushrooms growing in a moldy like corner, and it looks like she's trying to eat them. And then Goda's like, "What? That's too far, you guys. Like,
Right.
that's
The
not
mushroom
realistic."
closet was definitely an Ouran moment.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh my god, this is pretty good. I'm pretty into this."
But like little things in there that slipped in like made the series really fun, and I wish we would have gotten a little bit more of that.
I know. For me, I think actually my favorite chapter, I'm like, was it before or after that chapter? But it's also the one in volume 2 about the otaku.
Oh my gosh, it was before that, because I think that it was like partially at the end of volume 1. I think it crossed volumes 1 and 2.
But yes, that chapter was fantastic. Oh my gosh.
I just love how, like, again, over the top that room.
It was over the top and like thorough, and it was just so funny. I was dying.
And I love that he stood up for the guy who was like collecting all the figurines and stuff.
Exactly. I was like, I mean, that's a
I
good
thought it was
message.
so good.
Yeah. Because, yeah, they like deck out this whole room. They like get otaku to help them. They're like, you got all these figures that you collect. Like, let us borrow them for this film shoot or whatever. But then the actors come and they're like, only weirdos like have all these things. Only like sad loners have all these things. And then Goda goes on a rant about like how this anime that, you know, Hatori's made up or whatever, like won awards and all these things and XYZ. And he's like, don't underestimate, like, have you ever loved something as much as this person loves this anime? No. Like, come on.
It was just so well done. We all need somebody like that in our lives who understands our otaku life.
Otaku life, I know. I can understand. Sometimes I'm just like, you know, fandom is just too much for me a lot of the time.
Exactly. Like, we all have our level of, like, otaku that we can handle.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's definitely over the top.
We are a certain type. Like, I definitely, like, I'm on the lower spectrum. Like, I collect my manga, and I love my manga, and I'll talk about it. But outside of that, like, I'm not gonna, like, force feed it to everybody as much as I would love to in my heart.
I know that's crossing a line, so I'm not gonna.
There's just that level that we all have where we stop. Like, I don't collect all the figurines and all that kind of stuff. I just collect my manga, and I enjoy it.
It's a dangerous place to go when you start collecting figurines.
Right?
Like, no.
If you collect everything, you're, like, broke and
it's just so
in a house full of stuff.
I know. I'm like, no, I can't.
I'm like, my house can barely handle the manga and books I collect.
I know, yeah. I really did like the fake anime character that Hatori made up, or that she had somebody make up for her, like one of her assistants.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was so good.
She was like, because one of the points was that they were like, it's this very pretty girl, you know, like in stereotypical figurine fashion, like having her boobs out. But then they're like, but then in her transformation sequence, she gets her face covered with a skull mask. And I'm like, that actually looks pretty cool. Like,
right? Exactly.
I'd buy that.
It was very, like, a very long stream of consciousness, like, that it was so well thought out. It was really well done.
I know. Actually, that does segue well into the last thing that I really want, aside from shipping corner, which is very important, obviously, was the gender in this, because I was definitely disappointed. And I actually feel like, sadly, that little bit of transgression where it was like, yes, this fake anime girl who's really pretty in her transformation sequence had her face covered, and that's transgressive, was actually like the best gender thing in it.
Right. Other than that, it was very stereotypically gendered. And that's really hard.
In this modern age, like, you could have had,
in that group, you could have had one or two characters that identified differently, and it could have been really amazing to use the platform to do that. But we just didn't get lucky this time.
I know. I mean, I don't even need to take it that far. It's just like, there are, 3 or 4? There are like a handful of directors that we are shown in the series, you know, that the art squad is helping, because there are, 4 clubs or something? Yeah. But each of them is male. Like, all of the directors are male, and I'm like, no, come on.
Well, there's the one that you could stretch and say maybe, but outside of that, yeah.
Oh, because they wear masks all the time, yeah. I took him as male. Admittedly,
Yeah.
I'm sexist in this way. But
Well, honestly, they all, like, stereotypically felt male.
yeah.
Like, none of them felt like they could have been feminine.
They didn't present as female, yeah.
No.
So, like, I was really disappointed in that. I was like, come on, not even one of the 4. Like, come on.
Right.
And then if you're including Ryuji, that's definitely 5. There's at least, like, 6, and all of them are male. And I'm like, no.
Like, come on now.
Come now. And one of them is Richie Kai, which, okay. So Hatori also has little, in her character thing, she's like, I named them all after famous directors. And Richie Kai is Guy Ritchie, which is definitely the most overt one. No,
Seriously.
except she had that one side character who was Mayao Hayazaki.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
I don't know who that one is.
No, not at all. Mm-mm.
But so Kai is a very, like, obviously supposed to be, like, a gay stereotype who
Right.
conflates, like, gender and sexuality a lot of the time. And it's just very, very, very stereotyped with him being like,
I was gonna say, it felt so boilerplate where she could have really, like, she really could have done an amazing character with that, but I just felt like it was so, like, stereotypical boilerplate gay person. I'm like, come on.
yeah.
Most gay people aren't like that.
I know. I'm like, what? Come on. And it's just so, it's so weird after Ouran, which, like, Ouran has plenty of things that are wrong with it gender-wise, but, like, it also
Yeah.
had some really great things about it gender-wise that people really resonated with like, Haruhi's
Right.
dad and Haruhi.
Seriously. But then, you know, you have medical test day where boys are stripping in front of everybody for show, and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. Ouran, like,
I'm not-
again, has
I'm not
not
arguing that, but-
aged well, I don't think, in many ways, but, like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
But for its time, it did pretty well.
Yeah. I hated that, like, So and Ruka have the same issue, which is being too polite, which is definitely, like, a feminine thing.
The demure feminine woman.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just like, dudes never worry about this. It's coded for men to be like, we're confident and, like, we just, like, take up all the space, and women are always like, how can I make myself feel smaller and smaller and smaller to, like, make
Right.
room for these very big masculine, like, personalities.
It's crazy.
And I'm like, ugh, Ruka. Okay. Oh, we didn't really talk about So. Oh no, So.
So.
Oh no, So. I guess we have to talk about her now. Okay. Do you hate her more than Ruka?
No, they're about the same for me, though. Like, I can't say I like her better than Ruka, but I can't say I like her worse either. They, like, they feel like almost the same person to me, so. And the only thing that was different for So is she was more anxious, like Ranmaru.
Yeah, that's really, like, the keys that really And she's not as good at crafts. I
And they're
guess.
cousins, aren't they?
Oh, they're definitely cousins. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
I know. And
I'm so mad. Oh, okay. I mean, that's for shipping corner, but yeah. How do I
Yeah.
feel generally about So? I mean, yeah, she didn't really leave, like, that big of an impression on me. And I feel like that's one of the things, like, she's a character because she's not part of the art squad and just comes in randomly. I feel like she is part of the reason that things feel detached. Like, she doesn't get fully integrated into things, so it feels weird. Like, she feels like a weird distraction half the time.
Oh, I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you relevant? Get out of here.
Get out of here. I'm like, I know you always need, like, some side characters, but I don't know. I'm not feeling it.
Yeah, exactly.
There were other side characters that were much more interesting.
That actually felt more connected than she did to me. Like, there were some of the directors that stood out as more connected to everything than me.
Yeah, like Hida, the one who's like,
Yeah,
Goda
The
has
first one you
betrayed us
meet.
all
yeah,
by not being a director anymore.
seriously.
I did like Goda's story with, like, the story behind his movie was actually, I was
Oh
like,
my
that's
gosh,
good.
yeah, I totally teared up.
Oh. I was like, oh, I mean, I kind of didn't like that in the end. He was like, no, I didn't regret like exploiting my grandfather's death. That's not what I thought. And I'm like, that would have been valid if you did, though. Like,
yeah, exactly. But like that moment when you figure out the reason why, I think it's just because I was so close to my grandfathers that like it resonated with my feelings for my grandfathers. So I think that's where like the soft and made me cry moment came from more than the actual content, if that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of like the reveal is all right, but it's just like, you know, it's a little bit all over the place in there. But I'm like, oh, I like that this movie connected them all in the end, and it was always Goda that was connecting them all. That's
exactly.
That's understandable to me. I'm like, yeah, I know the Goda character. It's all good.
There's always one character to connect them all.
Yeah. One true character.
Exactly.
I also did like, even though it was like pretty overt, I liked the symbolism with like Izumi being like, I like old things, and he goes and collects pottery. Like he'll go into rivers and find bits of pottery and then be like, I can make this pattern, I can connect this pattern into a new pattern. And I'm like, yes, I get it. Like you want to make new memories and like you know, think about the past in the way you want to. I get it, Izumi. I get it. Good for you.
Right?
Okay, but it's very important. This shipping corner, I feel, is gonna be like contentious because I don't know about you, but I actually didn't feel very strongly about any of the ships it wanted me to feel things about.
Right. The only one that I'm attached to is the one that isn't completely canon.
Right? They're like, is never overtly stated. No, they fake date that one time. There's one time where she says Tomu is her boyfriend.
I know, and I was like living for it.
But otherwise, I was like, no, I don't feel chemistry with any of these people, but okay.
No, but some were like destined from the beginning for me, so.
But okay, so Ranmaru had a crush on Ruka.
And yeah, that was never going to work.
That was just never going to work. I was
also... like with his anxiety and her being so quiet and demure, it never would have worked. Like, take out, like, her rich family side, like, it never would have worked.
It just, yeah.
It just wasn't meant to be. It was an early college crush. We all have them.
We all have those, yeah. And, like, she's clearly never interested in him.
Very clearly.
Very clearly never interested in him. I guess I kind of wish, well, I mean, I guess it's implied that he likes So in the end. We're getting there. But, okay, so obviously Tomu and Maasa is the best one. But, so Ruka and Goda, did you like them in the end?
They work really well together, so I was okay with it. Like, it didn't bother me at all. But I didn't, like... I wasn't, like, cheering when they finally got together.
You weren't like, I desperately
like,
need to see them kiss?
It's just like, oh, the ship that she always wanted to work out finally worked out for her. Good for her. That's all I felt.
Yeah, it was like, it makes sense. It's like, but you don't want your... that's not how love works. You don't want it to be like, it makes sense, like, intellectually. You want to be like, no, I want to feel it in my heart, and I
exactly.
don't.
We want our hearts to, like, feel things, and it just didn't.
I did not know.
It was fine, but...
I know.
I think they both would probably have been better served with other people, but...
Not, like, within the series.
No, yeah, just in general.
In general, yeah.
I like the moment where, I guess it's also at the end where, you know, Goda has given Ruka too much to do because he spread the true rumor that she's leaving soon or whatever, and then they're getting into these little spats or whatever, and
lover spats.
Lover spats. And Maasa is like, what's going on with these two? Are they fighting? Are they flirting? And Ranmaru's like, you wonder that too?
Yeah, right?
I was just like, yes. That was the best moment with them. And it wasn't with them, it was with Maasa and Ranmaru.
Right?
God. So unfortunately, I think this means that we have to talk about So's ships, which... So it was really annoying because you can see hints of So and Ranmaru in the very beginning, like in volume 1 or 2, maybe not 1, but like 2 or 3.
I think it was in volume 2.
Yeah. There's definitely at least one panel where I was like, oh no, don't do it. Don't do it, Hatori, don't do it.
Right? Right? Why the cousinship?
Why the cousinship? And I'm like, it's like, oh, they're distant. So then me and Ash
I
are
would
talking.
rather deal with a step sibling ship.
than a
Oh yeah,
cousinship.
because they're not related by
Because step
blood.
siblings, they're not really related.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no. So she definitely hints at it pretty early on, but then so Asher and I were talking about it, and we're like, no, we hope this doesn't happen. And then, but I was ahead of him, right? So I was like, oh no, she starts so like somebody else or whatever. I was like, Ranmaru doesn't like her and everything. So it is implied for a bit that So likes Izumi. I mean, it's not she does like Izumi, but Izumi doesn't like her. Do you like them?
Izumi doesn't like anybody. So like, I would have been okay if that one had gone somewhere. So in Izumi, that would have bothered me a lot less actually than So and Ranmaru.
Oh yeah,
Because
she really would have been like super understanding of Izumi and like his memory and stuff, and she would have been really patient with him. So I think it could have worked really well.
I guess I got semi-excited at the end because I thought that when they went to the festival and Izumi saw So with what's his dumb face that he wasn't important, Manaki?
Oh, yeah.
Side boy who was interested in her, which he had no interest in. They go to the fireworks
and
festival.
Poor boy, he was so sweet.
He was sweet too. He definitely had that annoying boy thing where he was like, oh, can we just go meet my friends? And it's like, So doesn't want to. And then he like doesn't pick up on that. And I'm like, this is such a dude thing. I've done this
It's
so
such a
many
dude
times.
thing.
Like, oh my God.
Right?
Relatable. But yeah, I thought, because I guess Izumi was one of the like stalkers. They're all like stalking So. And so I thought it was going to be the trope where it's like, oh, he sees her with another dude. And then he gets jealous, and then they get together. And I was like, I mean, I don't necessarily want that to happen, because that's not great. But I thought it's better than Ranmaru and So.
Seriously. Thing is, So's still so young. I know we skip ahead 6 years by the end, but still, like...
Yeah.
it didn't have to be So and Ranmaru. He could have just asked, how's So? And it could have been, oh...
she's off traveling with her lover, and it would have been just fine there. They didn't have to imply that they were, like, liking each other still at the end.
Yeah,
because it's one thing to, like,
have a crush on a cousin, sure, whatever, but, like, no.
no,
But
don't
for your
go
cousin
there.
to be your life partner forever is a different story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot.
a little bit. I know. So yeah, so then switches to liking Ranmaru, and then has a mix-up where she thinks that Izumi is still in this suit that he had been in for filming, but Ranmaru has gotten into it because Izumi has to go to the bathroom, and so he's like filling in or whatever, and she overtly is like, is it bad to like your cousin or something? And I'm like, yes.
Right, and I'm like, yes. The answer is yes, don't do it.
The answer is definitely yes.
But then he was all like Twitter painted and flushing about
I
it.
know.
No, don't go there.
You should have been like, yes, don't like me. Clearly he
It
likes
would have
me.
been, yes, don't like your cousin.
Don't like your cousin. Ugh. So that was definitely like the most disappointing thing to.
Yeah, seriously. That's what took like an overall like 4-star series to me down to a 3.
Yeah. I was like, definitely.
I'm like, you
fair.
get a whole star knockoff for making that happen.
No cousins.
No cousins. That's blood relation. That's not okay. That's incest.
You're like, it wasn't okay in Ouran, and it's not okay here.
Exactly.
So what we're saying is Tomu and Maasa forever.
Yes, Tomu and Maasa forever. Give me a side series following them in LA. I would read it forever.
Yeah, make the side series about them in LA, and the one about Ranmaru's parents,
Crazy
and his
family,
sister.
and
Leave So and Ranmaru out of it.
seriously,
Don't
or at
leave
least
it.
have them make appearances not as a romantic couple.
Yeah, they're allowed. Ranmaru's allowed to go home, sans So, and then that's all though. But did you have any other final thoughts that you wanted to bring up?
Just that I think the series is worth it for the anxiety rep and the crafting parts. I know I've kind of like poo-pooed on a lot of the parts of the series in this podcast, but I did enjoy it.
Oh yeah, no, this is definitely not like I read it and I was like, this was fun. I
It's
genuinely
really-
laughed a lot.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
There are definitely bits where I'm like, this is really funny, and again, it will make you want to craft. So
It definitely inspires you to be creative.
yeah.
So if you're in a creative slump, read a volume, then you'll feel better.
Yeah. You'll feel so much better. Like, maybe don't read 5 volumes in 2 days like I did. Maybe a little much.
Actually, I read all 7 in one day
Ah!
for my reread. But I read a lot, so.
Too much. It's admirable, but it's too much for me. I don't know. I need like lots
It's
of
too much for most people. I'm just crazy. And I know that.
Great. So for me with this podcast, it's kind of weird because I'm like, as far as I know, Hatori's shorter things have not been brought over to America, which means
That's as far as I know as well.
yeah, so which means that now the podcast has covered all of Bisco Hatori's work, which is like
Wow, that's really cool.
that's pretty cool. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, but now I feel like I've not paid enough attention to other people, even though Hatori only has 3 things. But I'm just like, oh no, I
Right.
haven't done enough like Yuatase or something. Like, I need to go get me the Genbu Kaiden. I actually really, really want to do Genbu Kaiden, and I just keep putting it off. And then every time I think about it, I'm like, no, I love Genbu Kaiden. I need to do it. Why am I like this?
But, you know, I'm sucked into the long stuff like Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts, Yona of the Dawn. Like, I'm into a lot of the longer ones.
Oh no. I'm like, I don't have time. I have to like skip.
Ain't nobody
beat.
got time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that. I'm like, skip. Somebody come tell me when skip beat ends. I'll be like, oh, okay, that's.
Oh, I haven't even started Skip Beat. 'Cause
Exactly.
I have no idea when that sucker's ending.
But I feel like I've reached a podcast milestone. I'm like, I did all of one author's works.
Right, and once Blank Canvas is done, you'll be current on Akiko Higashimura for the time being.
Oh yeah, that would be sweet. I love also Higashimura. So.
We stand Higashimura in this house.
Higashimura. Thanks for listening to Shoujo and Tell. Comments, questions, constructive criticism, concerns. You need to gush about your OTP, in which there's only right answer, and it's Tomu and Maasa, okay? Only one right answer. Email shoujoandtell@gmail.com or leave a comment on shoujoandtell.com/behind-the-scenes. We're at Shoujo and Tell on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. Shae, where can people find you and your work on the internet?
You can find me at Shaegeeksout on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram.
Woo! Get all them manga recommendations.
Seriously.
Are you excited every time you see a new episode from us? If so, please consider leaving a rating in iTunes or Stitcher. I guess it's not iTunes anymore. Oh no, Apple Podcasts. Whatever. This will help the podcast reach more hearts, or at least ears. It's iTunes on my super old Mac that I haven't updated to the latest OS, okay? Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next time for My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness and My Soul Exchange Diary by Nagata Kabi. Which, those aren't really shoujo manga, but hey, I make the rules here, and I'm all here for that female empowerment. So stay tuned until then. Bye.